This video is the first in a series of 3 that will introduce you to coding in NVivo. Coding is an important part of many different methodologies, and there are very different ways of approaching this. This video is only intended to introduce you to the mechanics of using NVivo. You should always default to your methodology and your philosophical approach to data as guidance on how to do this. Broadly speaking, coding is the process of identifying passages of text, either words, phrases, or whole sections, or identifying timeframes in an audio or video file, or identifying areas of an image. Once identified, you allocate those to a particular code. A code could be a theme, a topic, a concept, an observation, an attitude, a behaviour, a keyword, a phrase, or an idea. For the vast majority of researchers, you may associate with your codes with the art of applying a piece of text to a theme. In NVivo, there are many different ways we can do this. All of our nodes are stored within this folder here in the codes area. You will notice there is a different type of code called a relationship that will be covered in a later video. When it comes to creating your nodes, there are broadly 2 approaches you can take. You can start with a priori ideas. These could be from the literature or based on a conceptual framework. In this case, you may start off by creating empty nodes and then finding pieces of text, areas of an image, or sections of a time frame to apply to those particular nodes. Alternatively, you may take a more grounded approach, in which case you've got little assumption about what nodes you may find, and instead you're seeing what emerges from the data. I'm just going to use this as an example, but I'll talk about the mechanics of how to do it both ways. Whenever coding, it's useful to start off by getting the interface ready for the process. Start off with opening up the file that you intend to code. In this case, I've chosen Charles's interview. Next up, in the Document Tools ribbon, I'm going to choose Coding Stripes and turn this on for all coding. Because I have a large screen, I'm going to drag this bar across and reorganize my interface. These bars represent the coding to the left of them. If I click here, it will show all of the text that falls into the case of Charles. To remove the highlighting, I just need to go to Highlighting and None. The reason I turn the coding stripes on is it will enable me to see, as I code, where those themes are within the text. Next up, to be ready to coding, it's useful to open the Nodes folder. This will give me a view of the themes on the left and the transcript on the right. I start off by reading the text, and I can see some interesting passages here. Charles seems to be talking about local identity, and so I want to code at that theme. There are several ways to code. I can choose the options in the ribbon, I can right click, or I can drag and drop. Alternatively, I can use the quick coding bar at the bottom of the screen. I'm going to show you how to do this by right clicking. After highlighting the text, I right click on the highlighting and choose Code. Here you'll see the Nodes folder is selected by default, and I can choose a new node. I can now name this and then click OK. I can see from the coding stripe now that this piece of text is now applied to the theme of local identity. As I continue to read, I can see Charles starts to talk about the fishing industry. Just as before, I highlight the piece of text that I want to apply to that theme. This time I'm going to show you a different way of creating that code. I click on the highlighting and drag and drop to the bottom of the Nodes list view area. When I let go, it opens up the option for me to create a new node. Here I'm going to name it Fishing and then click OK. Alternatively, I can create the themes first. To do so, I right click and choose New Node, and this time I'm going to create the theme Economy. Then click OK, and of course I can drag and drop into that newly created theme. If at any point I make a mistake, I can simply right click on the coding bar and choose to uncode. This will remove the coding. However, I want to restore this, so I'm going to highlight that same text again, and this time I'm going to drag and drop into that existing theme. As you can see, dragging and dropping works both for creating new themes by going to the bottom and applying to existing themes by hovering over and letting go on the appropriate theme. Alternatively, I could of course right click and code to either recent nodes, or choose the coding option at the top, select the appropriate theme and then click OK. As suggested at the beginning of this video, it's not just words that I can code. Here I have a photograph. In the same way, I can open up my nodes folder and code imagery as well. I'm going to highlight these commercial fisher boats, and I'm going to code them at the theme of fishing. To do so, I drag this bounding box over the area I want to code, I right click and then I choose Code. I'm going to choose my fishing node and then click OK. This process is very similar for audio and video, where I could highlight a section of the time frame up here, I can right click and I can choose to code. To give you more control of this, you can click play and then start selection. When ready, click finish selection and it will give you a much tighter control over the bit that you are highlighting. This can then be used to code in the same way. This video is just designed to show you the very basic mechanics of coding. The next video will switch to the Environmental Change Down East sample project to give you a much better idea of how you can explore the coding that you have done. It's also worthwhile to look at the later video on the coding query to look at this in a lot more detail. The third video in this series will return to the process of coding and will look at some additional functionality that you can use in this process. That video will also be essential in looking at how you can organise and hierarchy your nodes.